Hello and welcome in. My name is Helen Jennings and I am a Stampin' Up demonstrator based here in the UK.
Just going to turn that off because I can hear myself echoing in the background. So hopefully you can hear me loud and clear without me having to hear myself echoing back at myself. So welcome in. It's lovely to have you with us for these technique videos. And I'll just pop up on there. This is where you will find me, Love-a-Duckie.co.uk. This is my website, and that is the name of my business, and where you'll find lots of other things that I do, or if you need to contact me or whatever, you can find me through my website. But we are going to be doing a little technique known as a faux tile technique for this particular project, and I have picked some new DSP. So as this comes out to you, as you purchase or are gifted this tutorial bundle, this may not be out yet, but it will very much be on its way with the new catalogue, and it is a beautiful set of papers called the Mediterranean Blooms, and it is sort of lots of citrusy patterns, oranges and lemons, and on the back is these beautiful navies and blues sort of tiling effects. So it seemed the perfect pack of paper to pick for this particular project. Now, I have cut myself, I've got one of the patterns, so we've got both sides of this particular pattern of paper that we are going to be using. Obviously, if you are not if you don't have this paper, you can do this technique with other papers that you've got. It was just that these were to hand, and it's all about showing you the technique and then you making it your very own. So we are going to treat both of these pieces of DSP in exactly the same way. You do have all of your measurements and things on your tutorial, but to start with, I'm going to have the long side up against the top of my trimmer, and I'm going to score this each 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch if you are doing the imperial version. Let me just get that cutting blade well and truly out of the way. So I'm going to score it at 2.5 centimeters, 5 centimeters, and 7.5 centimeters. And the maths is much easier in the imperial for this one. It's 1, 2, 3. So each 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch across the top, and then we're going to swing it round and we're going to put a score line down the middle. Now, when you're doing tiles, you could make the tiles whatever shape you want. They might be square shapes, they might be rectangles going long ways. These particular ones I've got as rectangles going down the page, down the wall, down the card, however you want to look at it. So for the other way, I'm going to score it at 3.6 centimeters, and that's going to take it straight down the middle of that piece of paper. If you are working in inches, it's actually 1 5/16 to score it in half. If that's a little bit out, it's not going to be the end of the world. We may not all be perfect at putting our tiles on the wall, so don't let that be something that stresses you too much. So this other piece we're going to do it in exactly the same way: 2.5, 5, 7.5 centimeters, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 inches, and turning it round, and either 3.6 centimeters, or if you're using the imperial pieces, then they're going to be 1 5/16. So now that doesn't show up very well, particularly on that blue paper, but you have got score lines all the way along here. Let's start with this white piece, and I'm just going to gently, I'm not going to burnish it too much, I'm just going to gently fold along these score lines just to help them pop a little bit more from the background, to make them a little bit more defined. So we're not worrying about them being crisp folds, we're just trying to give a little bit of definition in there. And then I'm going to take a watercolor pencil, and I'm just going to come along that little groove that has been created where we have scored to give a bit of a feeling of some grout going in between our tiles. So wherever those score lines are, just going to run with white watercolour pencil along that groove. Highlight it a little bit, and I'm going to come the other way, and again just run my watercolour pencil along that groove just there. And then we're going to do the same on this big piece, and on this piece the white might show up a little bit more because it's obviously a slightly darker background. So let's come in along that score line. So good job our DSP is as good quality and as thicker paper as it is, because it does mean that you can mess it around a little bit like we are doing on this project, and it will stand up to it beautifully. So you can see that one perhaps a little bit better, where we've just come along and created those sort of grout lines almost. And now we're going to do, I don't know if it's quite the opposite, but we're going to bring in some smoky slate ink and a blending brush. So let me just load up my blending brush with some ink, and I'm going to fold along the score lines, and I'm going to fold them to create like a mountain. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run my inky brush across that mountain, just to create a bit of shadowing, which, as you can imagine with your tiles, as they're sort of slightly beveled on the edges, you just get that little bit of shadowing, and it also again helps to define where the different tiles are on your bit of paper. I'm going to fold again across the top there, add in shading across there, and then now you're getting a real tiled effect there from that. You can really see where those separate sections are on that tiled wall. Now this one's going to be the opposite, whereas the white showed up stronger on this one. You'll perhaps find that the shading doesn't show up quite so strongly on the blue. Nevertheless, it is there. You could also use a sponge dauber to do this. And I think did I come along that way? I don't know, I've forgotten where I've been. So there we are. We have our two pieces of paper, and we've got this sort of grid effect, this tiled effect on both pieces. We're now going to bring in, she says, this is where I had a class yesterday, and I'm suddenly thinking, did I get my Versamark out of my class box? No, I didn't. Here we go. I'm going to get some Versamark ink, and let's deal with these one at a time. So let's take the blue one, and we're going to tap Versamark ink all over the surface of it, because tiles are not matte papery. It's not wallpaper. We want tiles, so we need to give it that look of ceramics. So we've patted Versamark ink all over the surface, and I've got out my embossing tray. Ooh. We are going to fingers and thumbs. Going to cover that with embossing powder, trying as best as you can to cover it all and not get finger marks in it, but it is quite hard because you're always going to be holding it at some point. Right, so that's the blue one. I'll sit that just there for a minute and do this other one, and then we'll just put the heat gun on and heat them both up. So exactly the same. Versamark ink all over the top. Into our tray of clear embossing powder. Shake that about, make sure we get it covered up all over. A bit of a tap. Let's lay that out just there. Okay. Now let me just return this powder to the pot, because otherwise we have a disaster in the making. I will come in and finish brushing the rest of that powder up. But for now, we've hopefully averted any embossing powder disasters. I certainly have had them. I don't know whether you have. I'm going to put my heat gun on. Let's just give it a second to heat up before we're going to come in on our paper. And you can see that changing beautifully there. As that sort of dull finish on that paper changes as it heats. A beautiful shiny finish. So there's one piece. Bring in another piece. This one might not be quite so obvious on camera. You can see beautifully where it is changing. This is that edge along there. And round to the side. There we have shiny, shiny tiles for both of those pieces of paper. Right, I'm going to bring in, I don't very often use my great big stamping block, but we are going to use it on this occasion, but not for stamping. We're going to use it as to apply some pressure, because these, we've bent them a little bit, we've heated them, we've done all sorts of things. So in order to make sure that they adhere beautifully to our card front, let's get my lemons the right way up. One on. Sort of try and make sure that the border top and the sides is about the same. I'm not going to press it down just yet. I'm going to get the second piece on first. About like that. Now I'm going to take this block, lay it on the top, and I can use that apply some good all over pressure to make sure that that is all adhered beautifully to the front of our card. Here I've just got a little bit of white cardstock. Put it down to 10 centimetres, and I'm literally just going to sit it slightly over the groove just there. and run a score line along the top, and swing it round, do the same, and run a score line along the bottom. So that's given us now a bit of detail. I don't know how well that will show up on camera. Not ever so, I don't think. It's just going blurry because it's white. Or you can get a bit of a glimpse of it just there, where we've got the score line on the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to add some adhesive to that and pop that across the middle just to cover where those two bits of paper meet, so that if they're not quite where you want them to be. And again, we're now sticking onto a shiny sort of surface, so that extra push with that block helps. Right, so the other thing I have done, and I've done this ahead of time so that you don't have to necessarily watch me, I've taken one of the papers that's got these beautiful big lemons and lemon blossom on them, and I've just fussy cut one of those images. And I'm going to take some dimensionals. Just pop some dimensionals on the back. Because it's paper, I'm going to make sure that it's got a fair good number so that it helps to hold it. Card has a little bit more body of its own to maintain its own position as it was, but with the paper you want to make sure you've got enough dimensionals on the back. And it coming that way, or shall I have this one coming that way? On the card on the tutorial it's going the other way. I think I'll stick with it coming down this way. That's on there. And then here I've got a little thank you, and the thank you actually comes from the blueberry bunches stamp set. So let's just take a little oddment of white card. I've just put down an oddment of white card rather than measurements for this. If you're anything like me, I have got a whole little tub here full of strips that are offcuts from when I've cut down pieces of basic white card. So when it comes to doing sentiments and things, I just dip in to my little pot of strips. It's not often that I can't find one that will do the trick. I'm just going to sort of roughly cut round my thank you sentiment. Have that coming across our lemons. And then here I've got some classic matte dots, and I just want to get to the white ones, which are obviously at the top. And put a few classic matte dots about the place. See, always need to be in odd numbers, so we'll put 5 on there. And last but not least, I'm going to take a piece of white twine. I'm going to fold it in half, and with my doubled up section, I'm going to tie a bow. that. We'll trim those ends off. My glue dots appear to be missing in action. Oh no, here they are. Just can't see them. Let's just pop a glue dot onto that double bow. Then we'll have it tucked under there. And then for an insert, I've just got a piece of 13.9 by 9.5. I wonder if I've cut that right. Something I've not cut right. Either my card isn't right or my paper wasn't right. It was my card that wasn't right. So we've got a piece of 9.5 by 13.9 cardstock just there. I'm just going to take a little, this is just a 1.5 centimetre, which is let's have a look, about 1/2 inch strip of DSP. I'm just going to pop across the bottom there just to tie that inside with the patterns on the outside. Let's pop that in there. So there we have, hopefully you can see that tiled effect in the background there, the nice shiny tiles in those lemony, that lemony pattern that is then tied in with the blue is actually the back of that DSP. But as I say, you could use lots of different DSPs to create that. This is just one that jumped out at me as being perfect for this project. I shall be doing another tiled project for the blog hop that's coming up, or the blog hop that will already be live. And for this one, I didn't use DSP. I took a piece of card, and this one has got bigger squares on it rather than rectangles. And I have stamped it all over again. I've used the blueberry bunches stamp set and stamped it all over in blueberry bushel ink, dragged out that colour with a blender pen, used a watercolour, gold olive watercolour pencil to add some green to the leaves. But other than that, same principle, scored however you want your tiles. So these are bigger squares on this one. But again, use that white watercolour pencil for the adding a bit of definition to the grout, and grey smoky slate ink to add a bit of shadowing around the edges of the tiles, and then just a simple little greeting on there with some linen thread and a bow. So whether you're using DSP or whether you're creating your own background, I hope that you've enjoyed that technique and that you'll get your scoring blade out and your clear embossing powder and have a go at creating some faux tile projects of your own. So until next time, thank you very much.